Readers Entertainment Radio presents Booklights with your host, author Lisa Kessler. Booklights, where we're shining a light on good books.
Hello, everyone. We're continuing our spooky season here on Booklights, and I'm so excited to welcome back Kelley Armstrong. And she has a fantastic new horror novel that is out. I think it just came out last week, so you guys are in for a treat. She has been on the show before, but if you have never read her books, oh my gosh, you have an amazing backlist to get through to read, and they're all fantastic. So if you never read her before, I'll read her bio right here so you can get to know her. Kelley Armstrong is the New York Times best-selling author of over 50 novels in mystery, fantasy, and horror. She believes that experience is the best teacher, though she's been told this shouldn't apply to writing murder scenes. To craft her books, she has studied Aikido, archery, and fencing. She sucks at all of them. She has also crawled through a very shallow cave, you are so brave, and climbed half a mountain before chickening out. She is, however, an expert coffee drinker and a true connoisseur of chocolate chip cookies. And you can learn more at her website, kelleyarmstrong.com. And I did put a link to her website right there in the show notes. So feel free to click over there and look at all the delicious books that are waiting for you to read. And you can also sign up for her newsletter right there. So Kelley, are you there?
I am.
You have a new book out. I'm so excited to read it. It's called The Haunting of Payne's Hollow. Do you want to tell everybody about it? Why they should go grab a copy?
Well, it's just right for the season, which is great. That is one thing that definitely helps with horror coming out in September, October.
Yes.
People are primed for those fall reads. And yeah, so this one is, I always take on a trope in my horror. So I look at what tropes do I love to read in horror and say, how can I put my own spin on that? So this is that trope where you inherit a very valuable house or property, but you need to stay there for X amount of time first. And in this one, yes. So this is my narrator. Narrator Sam has just inherited her grandfather's estate, which is on Lake Ontario. I just blanked there. It's one of the Great Lakes. It's Lake Ontario.
One of those lakes.
Right. And it's a lot of property. So at this time, it would be worth a lot of money. And she very much needs it for her mom, who has early onset dementia and requires a great deal of care. And so as much as she'd like to say no to her grandmother, she has to go. Now, the catch is that she has not been there since she was a child, when she saw her father burying the body of one of her friends. And yes, so obviously family trauma, her father killed himself, and that was hugely traumatic for everybody except maybe their grandfather, who continues to insist that something happened and that he didn't do it. And so her grandfather's will says you must go back and stay there for a month. His plan being that she will discover the truth while, re-traumatizing his own grandchild.
Yay, thanks, Grandpa.
Yeah, exactly. He is not exactly a nice guy.
What? Oh my gosh. Well, what inspired the twisting around with Sleepy Hollow?
Actually, that part was completely accidental, as can happen.
Yeah.
I knew that I was going to be dealing with a certain branch of folklore that has to do with water, has nothing to do with Sleepy Hollow. And then when I was naming the town, I named it Payne's Hollow. Their surname is Payne. Hollow always has that horror-ish feel.
Yeah.
And then I realized it was in upstate New York, and I'm like, okay, that's really reminiscent of Sleepy Hollow. So am I going to change the name of the town, or am I going to lean into it? So I leaned into it and said that her grandfather always claimed that the legend of Sleepy Hollow was because the author had visited their property or
Oh.
their area, and that they had a legendary horseman on their property. So I leaned into that, and what could I do that was something different that did involve the horseman? So that part was accidental, just because I happened to have picked a name similar, and then realized it was also in a similar area.
Right, right. Oh my gosh. Do you have covered bridges and all the fog and
You certainly can imagine all of that. Yeah, it is that very upstate New York, and they're dealing with, colonial, what people brought over with them from the old country. Sometimes it was recipes, it was games, it was customs, sometimes it was the supernatural.
sometimes it was demons and gremlins and
Yep.
I love it. Well, when you were writing this book, did you have any, well, obviously you had the surprise of, hey, this is kind of like Sleepy Hollow, but did any of the characters and things surprise you?
I have said that there are two secondary characters. So we have our primary character, Sam, and then we have a couple of secondary characters that one acts as the antagonist, or the person who is in opposition to her, not the villain, but someone who's in opposition to her, and then someone acts as a friend. And we certainly saw, with because this is coming from something that when she was younger she did live there, she knows these people,
Right.
or she at least knew them in childhood. So it's reuniting with the people. And when I wrote my outline, I said one of these two has to die,
Oh,
and because it's horror, so you're always like, how do you know who lives, who dies, and like, if you have two people who are going to be helping her, whether they want to or not,
uh-huh.
they can't both survive. So I did not know until the actual scene when it happens which one
Wow.
died.
Wow.
Yeah, and I
So
still
it
felt
hurt you
horrible,
too.
but right. But I actually had planned on the other one dying, and then I got to the actual scene and went, no, this works so much better. It's thematically correct. It propels the story in the correct direction, as much as I hate doing it.
No, so sorry. Yeah, I had a character once who decided, no way, I'm living. And I'm like, dang it, what?
Right? Yeah.
You're living. Did you have like a favorite scene in the book? I mean, no spoilers, but was there a scene where you went, oh my gosh, this book was worth writing just for this?
Mm-hmm. I think it's always the toughest with these scary scenes, because
Mm-hmm.
they are the big picture ones. When you're imagining the book, you're imagining these core scenes of what goes wrong and the horror, and the worry is you're not going to portray them correctly, that you're going to get to that scene and it's not going to work, and you've imagined it and it won't work. So there is a scene where she finally, we have a lot of back and forth on, is she seeing things or not? And you finally get a scene that answers that. And it's a very big scene of a lot happening. And yeah, that was probably my favorite scene to write, because I'm like, oh, it worked. Everything that I had imagined for that scene worked out. Because yeah, sometimes you can picture it and you get there and you're like, this is not going to work. And it did.
Yeah. Yay. Well, and I know from horror that it sometimes that big aha, you've built up to it so much that then there's the pressure of, is this going to fall flat, or my monster isn't that great, or I
Right?
certainly
Is it
watch
going to be
horror
scary?
movies do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, is it really going to be scary?
Mm-hmm.
There's pressure when you start writing horror.
There is. It's like writing rom-coms where
Mhm.
where the pressure is to be funny. And I always say that it's much easier to write books that are not meant to be funny but have funny scenes. Because then if nobody notices, if somebody reads it and is not amused, it doesn't matter. Same as
Right.
same as a frightening scene. If you're going to write a thriller and it has some scary scenes, but the reader is not scared, the reader doesn't realize that you'd intended that scene to be scary.
Right.
In horror, it's very obvious that you intended
Yes.
this to at least be chilling in some way.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. And so anyway, that for me, when when you're tackling horror, and movies have that same issue, it's like the build, and then you see the monster and like, no, that's not scary.
Right, exactly. Where you finally see it and you're like, that was too, and you can't oversell it. You can't build up too much
Right.
to it, because then when you see it, I mean, I've always said the Haunting, which was the one that was adapted into The Haunting of Hill House, we
Mhm.
never see the monster. And having reread that, if she'd shown us what was, of course, there is the whole, is something happening, is it all in the character's head? But even if through the character's eyes she had imagined that she saw something, it would have never lived up to what had been built up. So in that case, it was better to never show us.
Right. And we always make it scarier in our heads
Mm-hmm.
than
Yeah.
anybody could ever. I always think
Yeah.
of Jaws, and I think, thank God that robot shark didn't work very well, because it was so much scarier just hearing the music and
Mm-hmm.
seeing that fin come up, and you're like, fart in your throat.
Yeah.
So well, I wanted to ask you about some of your other books, because you've written a gajillion, and
Yeah.
they're great and all different series. And what I love about you is that when you write a new series, it's like way new. You have time travels with ghosts, and you
Mm-hmm.
have werewolves and urban fantasy, and then there's the Canesville where you have the Fae. Do you have a certain flavor of mythology that you're most comfortable in, that you love the most, or are you still dabbling to figure out what that might be?
Yeah, I dabble, because there's nothing that I'm wedded to. So certainly Canesville dealt with Celtic, but more specifically Welsh. And my cursed luck deals with Greco-Roman. And my middle grade, I'm Blackwell Pages is a Norse. So I grew up on all those mythologies.
Mhm.
So I'm always looking at what can I pull in. So that's why in Payne's Hollow, I'm pulling in one of those types of mythology that we see in a lot of cultures. So there are certain sort of core stories which explain, it's not, I mean, people always like to say that means that they must be real, because all of these various places
Yes.
had them. But there's obviously both transmission of stories and the fact that you're dealing with similar fears. So if you're going to deal with something like water horses, it was often this idea of being pulled. There were other types, people being pulled underneath the water, and it's to explain drowning and also to keep people from going into the water. Like, there is something in the water, human, horse, something that is going to pull you under it.
Yeah, when I only had one historical paranormal that I wrote, and we were in Ireland, and they had Auguskies. I don't know, but it's like a
Yep.
water horse.
Yep.
But
Yep.
the mythology was like they take you down and then here's your organs. And I was always wondering, who lost all of their organs on the side? Because obviously they had to build a story around some fact. So I just kept thinking, who was the one who lost all their organs on the side of a lake? What?
Where were they drowning that something was ripping them apart? Loch Ness.
It washed up. I don't know.
I mean, where are they drowning? And organs were out, because then people say, well, this is because this happened.
Right.
And more, normally you have kelpies and such, which just pull people. You see them, you get onto their back, you can't get off. You're pulled in. Yes, because you need all of these stories to say, don't go in the water. At least don't go in the water by yourself.
Yes, bring a buddy, which still holds true even at the swimming pool. Bring a buddy.
Right? Yeah.
I had a guest on who has a new book of monsters from around the world. It's a cryptid book. And we were talking about how, because he said the most unsettling part was finding different parts of the world that are on opposite ends, that the stories have been around for centuries.
Right.
So they weren't talking back and forth. There wasn't social media, but they have the same monster. Like, what? So there might be something to it.
There could be.
Yeah, you never know. So for people who are more into ghosts and spooky things and time travel, your Rip Through Time series, you had a new book out in that. Do you want to tell people a little, is it about Jack the Ripper?
So the Rip Through Time series is, the only supernatural element in it is time travel. I do have a Stitch in, so just to totally confuse things, I have a Stitch in Time series, which has ghosts, cold case. It's Victorian time travel, ghosts, cold case mysteries, primarily romances. And so I wrote those to sort of test drive time travel. And then I did what I was waiting to do, which was a time travel mystery series. And my publisher decided to call it a Rip Through Time. And I'm like, so now I have a Stitch in Time and a Rip Through Time, and we have to keep those separate.
And they're very separate.
One is like one is more romance, standalone stories. The other is a series that is definitely mystery. So yes, that one is currently at, I'm just going to blank now, 4 books. It's at 4 books, and although the one that comes out next year does deal with ghosts, because it deals with Victorian spiritualism. Because I've been sort of looking at what was happening in that time period that I find interesting, and that my main character would find interesting. So I have given her a taste for the macabre. So definitely a case that involves spiritualism, whether there's ghosts or not, is still something that interests her, and let me delve deep into that world.
Fun. Well, because it's spooky season, for anyone who has not delved into the worlds of Kelley Armstrong, there is a series that's based on her books called Bitten. And there were 3 seasons of Bitten. And I double checked before our interview here, and you can watch them all over the place. It's on the Roku channel and Amazon Prime, and it's everywhere now. And this series is based on your very first book series, right? The Otherworld series. So you want to tell people a little bit about that world? That one is very based in monsters, very great for spooky season.
It is. So that one is, that was my first book, Bitten, which was, it was the world's only female werewolf, or as far as she knew, the only female werewolf. So that was written, those were written to be kind of thrillers with that paranormal angle. And then that there's 13 books in that series, which I can always remember because the 13th book
The
is
final
called
book was
13.
13. Yeah, that was
13.
fun.
It's like I just joke that they like ran out of titles for them, and it's just 13. But yeah, it went on to be a TV show that was 3 seasons and focused on the werewolves, whereas the books change narrators, so they sort of dance around. The first two are the werewolf, next two are witch, next one's ghost, and then it bops back to the werewolf. Whereas the TV series does include other characters, but it focuses on the werewolves.
On the werewolves, right, right.
Yeah.
And for readers out there who love urban fantasy, one of the cool things that I always loved about the Otherworld series is the changing of narrators. Because for me, I loved the Sookie Stackhouse books, but about 6 books in, I was tired of Sookie. I have to admit, I'm like, dang, make a decision. What are we doing? And I loved that in the Otherworld series, they could make a decision and then we get a new narrator. That was great.
Right. Yes. I mean, I think it was difficult in the back in the old time of urban fantasy. It was tricky because a lot of them had a strong romantic element.
Right.
And that could mean that you were choosing guys. Other people did it as you got together with somebody and stayed with them, and then went off and had your adventures.
Right.
But changing narrators meant that you could then focus on different couples, so you could have other couples getting together, and so that really kept it fresh for me. Although honestly, I feel like the average reader prefers the same characters throughout. They get very attached to those characters. They just want those characters. So or those narrators. Even if the other characters are there in the background, they I think that if you were to look at, I bet you at least 70% would be my guess, would prefer to stay with the same. Although as a writer, I much prefer jumping around and having different characters. Yeah.
Well, and I felt like that world that you built had so many different races of beings and everything that it really helped to switch narrators so that you could see what the necromancers were up against, and you could see what the, witches were doing with the wizards and all that. And you couldn't have done that if you stayed, with the one narrator.
Oh, yeah.
The werewolf. Yeah.
That was so actually Bitten only has werewolves. The first book is only werewolves. And it was meant to be a standalone novel. And the publisher said, would you ever consider turning it into a series? Because that was right at the dawn of urban fantasy, and they were all series. So I said I would, but I would have to bring in other characters, because I cannot have just werewolves with the threat of the year. Every year they face some new threat that is very specific to the werewolf pack, and I'm like, I would not have gotten far, like book 5 maybe, and then I would have just been like, that's it. So bringing in other characters meant that widening that world, so you can have, even if a book is focused on the werewolf, the threat can come from something else.
Right. Do you miss, when you're writing these horror books, so far you've done 3 and they're all standalone, do you miss not having a series, or is it refreshing?
It's refreshing. I mean, I like going back and forth. I don't think I could ever do nothing but standalones, because it is nice to fall back in with those characters. I'm writing in my Rip Through Time series now, book 6, because we're that far ahead. And it's really nice to just go back in, all the characters, you've got all these secondary characters, you can continue to play with all of the storylines, all these settings, and you can pick and choose and say, who's going to be in this book? What new settings can I add? What new people can I add? Whereas a standalone, you have to keep it much more focused. It's just this small number of characters, and it must wrap up at the end, where of course people can say, oh, I would have liked to have seen another book with those characters, and I'm like, they are so traumatized now that we're
They're
just
no
going to
longer
let them
speaking to
rest,
me.
okay? We're just going to let them rest because you hit the end of a horror novel. Like, and I just think your like characters have to be traumatized.
Yes.
Nobody can just come out of that going, "Oh well, all my friends and family died, but I'm fine."
Yes.
Really?
But let's take a vacation to Tahiti. Well,
Yeah.
because of that, does it take you longer to write one of the horror standalones than it does your series? Because your series, you kind of know where all the puzzle pieces are and there's
Mhm.
maybe not so much research. Does it take longer to write standalone?
I feel like it doesn't necessarily take longer, but there will be more
Oh,
revisions because with the series ones, you know where you're going.
right.
You're comfortable. You've got those characters set. You go in, so the edits and revisions are fairly small. With the standalone, you're very much looking at, okay, did that do what I wanted it to do? And if not, what do I need to change? My next horror novel was meant to be first person entirely, which the other three are. But I got about halfway through and went, this is not working. We need to see the other characters' points of view, which then means going back and
Uh,
changing things, revising things, and you're going to do a lot more of that with a standalone. That's not really a problem with a series book.
well, I'm just saying Stephen King had Christine all in the first person and then we switched to third. So, you could you should be able to break that rule too.
Yeah, no, and it is easier with standalones to say that a different book can have a different, thing.
Right.
So yes, it is much easier to sort of bop around and say for this book I'm going to do this, and then I'll go back to doing this. Series, you really have to establish it at the beginning.
Right.
I'm starting something new now, a new series, and it's really that first book is going to take more revision than anything else because it's not only something new, but it's the foundation of an upcoming series. So I'm going to be revising that more than I would even revise a standalone because I wrote it, did the first draft, and said okay, I can see the bones of what's working here, but because it's that foundation, you have
Right.
to get it exactly right. Like everything from, is it in first person, third person, present tense, past tense, multiple points of view, down to the character development, what the world building is, what you've said can and can't exist. You're stuck with that for the rest of
Right.
the
For the rest of the
series.
series.
So it's a lot of work. Yeah.
Yes. Can we have a little clue of what the series is coming up,
Yeah,
or is that
so I am wrapping up my one mystery series, which actually became two. It was my Rockton series that turned into Haven's Rock. So there's like a series and a spin-off that's ending, and so I pitched something new, which is a little more supernatural, going back to that. So Rockton was very grounded. There was nothing at all
no
magical in it.
magic? Dang it.
No magic, but this one will go back to having somebody who is going to be investigating things that are going to turn out to be supernatural. So
Ooh,
yes.
can't wait. Okay, you heard it here first, guys. Um, so before we let you go, because I could talk to you all day, it is spooky season. So I'm asking everyone, what is your favorite spooky season movie that we should all be watching?
Favorite spooky season movie. I just like going back and watching ones that I haven't seen in a very long time because I'm not someone to really rewatch movies.
Mm-hmm.
I know people love rewatching them, and I generally don't. But I found that hitting my age, I'm going back, and now that especially horror has become so much bigger. I mean, went out and saw Black Phone 2 on the weekend. It seems like there's almost always a horror movie out there, and
True.
often a good one. And for like years, it was so
They're all
barren
bad.
out there where you just
Yes.
There was, if it said horror, you were like, no thanks, because you knew, even if you were a horror fan, it wouldn't be good. So I've been going back and like watching The Thing, American Werewolf in London, but watching all those like 80s classics too, that sort of go back, Halloween, just kind of going back and saying, okay, now we've got, I think, a new golden age of horror. Let me go back and watch the horror that was the golden age when I was a teenager.
Yes. Well, if you are streaming, because I'm the same kind of age group, there is a movie that came out, I think, last year. It's an Amazon movie, Amazon Prime, and it's called Totally Killer, and it takes place now, but they time travel to the 80s when there was a serial killer. It is, if you were a child of 80s horror, you will love it. It's such an ode to the old movies, and they time travel back, and her daughter goes back. Anyway, it was really fun.
Very good.
Like 80s horror, so check it out.
Good.
Well, before I let you go, when somebody finishes The Haunting of Payne's Hollow and they're super excited, how can they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Best way is email. Email's really easy, which is mail@KelleyArmstrong.com. You can also find me sporadically online. I feel like these days the social media is so scattered that it's really hard to like say, oh yeah, you can find me on Twitter. No, I'm not there. So I'm on Threads, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. It's all very sporadic, but I am there.
Well, and sometimes it's not our fault because they don't send out notifications. So it's all very
right. The like reach on everything is so bad that you can post, and you can post 5 times. I've got this new horror novel coming out, and still 6 months from now, someone will say, what do you mean I missed your 2025 horror novel? Bam. Can't help you. Yep.
And we feel like we're screaming into the void.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, look.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for being here. Everyone run out and grab The Haunting of Payne's Hollow. I know I'm going to. It sounds fantastic. And thanks again, Kelley, for being here today. It was so much fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Booklights. Be sure to connect with us at www.readersentertainment.com for articles, blogs, videos, and podcasts that matter to readers.